Welcome everybody. This is Hugh Massie, the chairman and founder of DNA Behaviour International. And today I'm delighted to be hosting another one of our identity conversations. And I have Hendrick Crafford with me from Bloemfontein, South Africa. So I'm very privileged to have one of South Africa's luminary integral coaches in the financial services industry with me today. Hendrik does some very special work around ontological coaching, and I think we'll hear more about that as we go through the conversation. So welcome, Hendrik.
Thank you, Hugh. A big privilege to be here, and also good evening from South Africa when we're having this conversation. So thanks, Hugh.
Yeah, technology is always wonderful that we can do these conversations at all times of the day across the globe. So Hendrik, why don't you tell me a little bit about your life background, career background, and how you got to the place of setting up Craffies coaching. I know you've had an extensive financial services background, so why don't you give us a little bit of a rundown on your story?
Yeah, thanks, Hugh. I grew up as a farm boy in the northwest of South Africa, and then I went and made a short stint in the Air Force, and then I joined the financial service industry. At that point in time, I was probably as some of the youngest planners. I was, I think, 24 when I joined the industry. I started at the bank brokerage, and I put my hand to bank brokerage and financial planning for more or less 10 years. Then I went into management, and then to provincial management, and then did the strategic projects for bank brokerage. But concurrently to that, most probably 16, 17 years ago, I had one of those moments where I sat down and said, where am I going with my life? And at that point in time, I said, if I can do one thing, I'll be happy, and that's developing people and organizations I interact with. And at that point in time, I then sat down and said, what must I do differently in terms of my work? I'm enjoying my work as at that point as a regional leader, managing a group of financial planners, and the thing that came up was coaching, interesting. And then I started my journey, did NLP, did integral coaching with New Ventures West at Cape Town University. They are the local trainers for New Ventures West in San Francisco. I had the privilege, I was the second group, so James O'Flaherty was part of our mentors for that year-long program. And then about 3 years ago, one of the other insurance companies actually asked me if I don't want to come and start a new distribution business for them. I went out on a contract, and at that point in time, when I was back at the front end, I saw here's a big need for one thing in the industry, and that's getting not only selling policies to clients, but also bringing the behavior in. And then I started with this whole thing around how do we look at bringing a model to financial planners that's not foreign to the way that they engage with clients, because financial planners is in a conversation with clients every day. But how do we make that a deeper conversation that's not just talking about rugby and braai, but braai is barbecue in our world, and but around why aren't we achieving certain things? What is that behavior that's keeping clients from doing that? And then we actually started a journey with the Free State University. It's our local university, where at the School for Financial Planning Law, which does the CFP in training in South Africa, is one of the providers in South Africa, which actually started CFP training in South Africa. We started a joint venture where I then put down the material, and we started financial coaching and financial coaching training. And yeah, that's the journey. And yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's very nice working with financial planners and working with people like yourself, you, and the wonderful work that you and the DNA team does. So yeah.
So thank you, Hendrik. So just to go back to the start, what got you into financial services in the first place as a 24-year-old from the countryside?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was in finances in the Air Force. I always loved working with people. However, I'm more introvert, but when I'm engaging with people, I enjoy it very much. I must have stand back that little bit sometimes to rejuvenate myself. And I was searching for something where I can work with people, but help them with their finances. And it's one of those things. There was nobody in our family that was a financial advisor. My father actually hated financial advisors because he said anything that he needs, he can actually buy direct, and that was many moons ago. So yeah, so that then I started off, and the interesting thing is, I initially started off as an IFA. I didn't start through a tied agency channel, which is the normal stage at that point in time. You started in a tied agency, and then I actually became competition for the local bank brokerage in the small town, rural town that I was, and they then came and said, "Don't you want to join us?" Which was great for me at that point in time because it was very lonely, and you had to, learn everything by yourself at that stage. That was way back 1990. So yeah.
Yeah, so really, it's something that you stepped into, and you went on the career journey, and then in the industry in varying roles, from the producer side, I suppose, to the management side, and then 16, 17 years ago, you had that wake-up moment. Was there something that triggered the wake-up moment that turned you more to the coaching side and looking at behavior?
Yeah, so I did a values exercise at that point in time, and I'll never forget. I actually was reading Laurie Beth Jones' book, The Path, and I was doing a path exercise, and based on the verbs, and exercise is nice because it don't just look at values. It also looks at for who do you want to go and do it, and from that then I came to the point that this is something that I want to go and explore and start a journey with, because I think there can be value for myself in terms of a development path, but also adding value to people that I interact with. Yes, you.
Yeah, actually, I know Laurie Beth Jones, and she does a lot of work in the Christian world.
Yeah.
In the United States, I haven't had any dealings with her in recent times, but I did back in the mid 2000s, around that time. So, which is probably about when the time that you're going down this path. So yeah, so you're very much about getting Hendrik, getting people connected to their purpose, to really to the core of who they are. Would that be right?
Yeah. So I think for me is I love to get people connected and developing people and getting people more successful. That's for me, very nice. And I enjoy it. It gives me purpose in my life, because I think through doing that, I'm actually glorifying God at the end of the day, which is my main purpose, for the time being. Yeah, we don't know for how long, is, if I can do that and help people having a more meaningful life. But then at the core of that, it also sits, finances, and I think where people sometimes get it wrong, it's one of those things is not you must first have money to be happy. It is money is only an enabler. So how can how can we get the skills to people so that they can manage their money better? But we also know, in terms of financial capability, it's also then how do you have that inner drive and the attitude and to be able to go and do, because there's thousands of self-help books around finances in any bookstore, on Kindle, Amazon. There's so many blogs written about it, but why is people still so sluggish in terms of their finances? And it's a behavior thing, so we must focus also on that part. And I think that's the wonderful work, where we from a financial coaching viewpoint, you from a DNA viewpoint, and all the work that you do, where we can get that and bring something to clients where we can actually go and help them. I do a money mastery courses also in larger groups, and if I see the value one can unlock through that, because it mustn't also be a guilt thing. It is, if you can understand that's your personality and that's why you are doing certain things, then you can know what is the difference you can make through being awareness. Bring that. Either I must get a guide to help me, a coach or financial advisor, whoever must help me, or I can start getting that learned behavior and build my own capacity. But I can then also I like to call it guardrails, put guardrails in place, so that if I see this is the trigger, then I know now I must be careful. I'm going to go into spending more than what I'm earning. I'm going to go outside of my budget. So how do I put those guardrails in place and not feel guilty about it? Because I see in the money mastery courses, a lot of clients end up, and when they say, oh, but I'm so bad at managing my money, but how do I build that skill? Else it will just be a guilt trip and a fear thing that just repeats itself, so
yeah. And a lot of when I had my wake up moment, which was in late 1999, but it took me a little while to sort it out. But it came back to helping people all over the world become self-empowered. And I realized pretty quickly that was not going to be helping them understand what a stock or a bond was, or financial instruments or anything like that. It was going to be teaching people about themselves. And that had been pretty deep rooted inside me. And I think that's really where your journey is at, and you've got to understand yourself first before you can deal with money. And as somebody said to me this week, a lady, Julie Murphy, who's a financial literacy coach advisor here in the United States, you've got to learn to love yourself before to enable money to love you. And I think it's really getting people to love themselves at the end of the day is a big part of this, which is understanding their own behavior, who they are, and not being ashamed of it.
Yeah, that's so true.
And it is getting into, as we were talking about earlier, is getting people to their purpose, to really to their being. It is so important. And so Hendrik, when you completed Financial DNA, which you did recently, and just for our listeners, you can go online to financialdna.com and take a trial and get a report. It takes 10 minutes or so to do it. But when you completed it, what and you got your report, how did you feel when you got the report back? How did it speak to you?
Yeah, I think it was actually a very great moment for myself, working through the report from a money perspective, because I've completed stacks of other reports over the years. I myself is a registered Enneagram practitioner, and I done a lot of work around Enneagram and money, etc. Has done a lot of other things over the years, and the thing that stood out for me, it talks to money in the first place and the behavior around money. The second thing is that there was a few things that came out for me that I was blind for with all my years of financial coaching that I didn't see. And that comes from being a facilitator, and part of that was I do not necessarily like conflict. So I would sometimes say yes to people for, let's go and eat out, go and have dinner tonight, but that was actually not in my budget. Or we on holiday and the wife and kids say, okay, can't we go and do that? And it was not really in what I thought, and yeah, let's do it. That was the one thing that stood out for me. The other one was around budgeting. Is I can do a budget with my technical background to the T and the 1 cent for you, but is how do I stay with that budget? And so that was most probably the two big things where I said, but okay, instead of a budget, most probably a spending plan will work better for me, that I pay what I need to pay, the debit orders goes through the account, and I've got X to spend a month, but I can spend it on the lifestyle I still want and giving back for the people that I love, but I know this is what I have got to spend, so that's two things, for instance, that I took out that stands out for me from the report, So
yeah, and so just for the listeners, everybody that completes financial DNA is allocated into one of 10 styles, but the system actually has 4 trillion combinations, and there's different traits and factors. So no one is actually the same, but just a general categorization. But I think what is interesting that you brought up was the spending plan and the way in which that whole part of financial planning, and because it is reframed, because often we talk about budgets, but in a way a budget is sort of a conflict for a lot of people. Yeah. And it's a very challenging term. But when you say spending plan, okay, I've laid out what I can spend and the balance is left over for other things, and really what my desires in life are, it becomes a bit easier to deal with.
Yeah, no, for sure, you. So yeah. The other thing that was most probably interesting for me is the whole thing about what is the best environment a financial planner can create for me to stay with my financial plans. And the whole thing in my case that I like to rather take control of the financial plan, and the financial planner must understand that. But also then most probably must have a little bit of a contrary style to mine to keep me to my plans and with my guiding me, So that's the other useful information that for me stands out looking at the report,
Yes, because a lot of financial planners, if they were to work with you, and you're quite an independent person, so you want to somewhat manage it yourself, they want to manage the client and have it all under their control, but not understanding not all clients want that. So how do you make it a collaborative relationship? And that, I think, then changes how you communicate with the client. And so sort of what I'm picking up is, Hendrik, that it brought out a few blind spots for you, or clarifications of yourself more clearly, or in a different perspective. And that's what this often does. And it becomes a great conversation. How does it play out in how you coach people, and you coach individuals, but also you coach other financial planners? So how does your facilitator style, and a little bit more reflective, I think, in the way you do things, how does that come out in how you coach people?
So we use the DNA as part of our financial coaching training. We embed it into the financial coaching training, but I also do like your coaching support to financial planners. I do quite a bit of that for independent financial advisors that don't want to take up the coaching role, or are uncomfortable, or with their high net with clients. I follow that process, and I think my facilitator style helps me a lot there, because I'm not bound by my own style as such, and I can facilitate the conversation to let the different people then explore their own styles, and be open and curious, where people then sometimes feel that they don't totally agree with something in the report. The facilitator style gives me that benefit to be open and, just go with curiosity and see what comes out of it. And, I must say, out of every conversation, it's different, and it's a wow coming out of each conversation, because there's always something new that you can see the client took from it, and secondly, that I as a coach can take from it. That's the beauty of coaching. One always still learns. So
Yeah, so it's in a way what you're doing with financial DNA, and then just in your overall process is the integral coaching process is allowing clients to explore themselves.
Yeah.
And even if they disagree with some aspect of the report, I've always found that's actually good when they do, because it sparks a conversation where the truth starts to come out.
Yeah.
And for you being a facilitator, it enables you to ask questions and to probe why someone thought that. For example, how does someone deal with conflict?
Yeah.
That could be very important. If you're training a financial advisor, for them to understand that is important in terms of their client dealings. So there must be something that you do, though, when you're Hendrik, allowing people to explore themselves. How do you do that? How do you help them get to that deeper part of what their own meaning in their life is?
Yeah, so I like to come from an ontological coaching perspective specifically, and using the language of the report, but also using the language that the client gives me. Also exploring what the client's mood and emotions is, and then see how they react and how it sits in themselves. Because from an ontological coaching perspective, we believe that if we can move the way people talk and how they make assessments and what their beliefs are, we can enable them to build new competencies with a new way of looking and observing the world, because we just observe the world for who we are. So if we can move who we are, we can move them. So I would normally start very simply by asking the client, how are they experiencing, how did they experience the report, and what stood out for them, and what and what do they agree and don't agree with. And then I like to take the report simplistically in 3 parts. Is how do you want to engage with your advisor, and what communication style? How do you prefer? What didn't work from your previous engagement with other advisors? What do you want from the relationship from an advisor? And bring that conversation then back to the report. I always, when I train financial planners, I say there's a part of the report that's like doing a competency-based interview. Somebody will say, but no, that's not me. I'm great at budgeting. Okay, that's fine. Okay, how do you do your budgeting? How often do you do a reconciliation on your budgeting? How many accounts have you got? And then you start getting the evidence, and you start getting people to bring the facts to the table. And I'm not there to judge, but they'll get to their own realization. The second part is then around the dials in terms of the report. So I call it the financial competencies, is to say, how do you deal and manage your finances? And then the last part is then, how do you think about investments, risk? What knowledge have you got? Which is great, especially in the 5-6-page report, is that the whole thing at the bottom where you then talk about learned behavior, where the ontological part again comes in. What is your mood about markets? What is your mood in terms of where you think you are in terms of your journey, etc., which then again is a very rich conversation. So those three parts, relationship, communication, what do you want from your financial planner, competencies in managing money, and then how do you think about investment. So that's how my standard, more or less, conversation, how I look at the report.
But you're using the report to ask questions. And in a way, every client has some kind of wall up. There'll be some barriers because everybody, no one's going to say, not many people are going to say, I'm a terrible budgeter. So you got to get past that wall. And then, in a way, what you do is you probe people step by step, because the questions you're asking or what I ask are pretty similar. And you start to find out the truth. And some people will be very good at budgeting and sticking to it, but most are not. It's almost too challenging. And then I think the same is with risk. Clients often think that they're going to take more risk than they do, or that they know more about portfolio building and investing than they really do. But it's easy. You can use this approach to get behind the veneer. But I think also, Hendrik, you're getting down to their purpose too, aren't you?
Yeah.
To what they're helping them discover what their real motivator is.
Yeah. And it's interesting, especially with couples. The other day, I had a financial planner that actually said I must do a debrief between himself and his wife. And what was interesting when we got down to the values, the one was development driven. Wants to build something for himself, etc. Where the wife was lifestyle and quality of life was important for her. And as we were talking, they started laughing and said, but this is actually the conflict in our marriage, caused by this, because you want to spend money on another course, so because you believe you're going to earn more money, and then we'll have enough money to do the lifestyle changes and have more parties and do work to the house, etc. Where I want to spend the money now on the house and parties, etc. So that's a core part, because understanding that, we can actually know, what is sometimes some of the reasons why clients is battling to do their budgeting. Why do they battle to put long-term goals in place, etc.? Because if we understand that part, the values part and the purpose part, then one can, George Kinder talked about lightening the torch, or he still talks about that, is if you understand that meaning part and you can get the goals and stuff to build around the meaning part and the purpose part, then it becomes so much easier to build a plan from there. So
well, it's a plan that people are going to stick to. And I think what you're also alluding to, Hendrik, is you can build a plan for yourself, but it's different building a plan for you and your partner or spouse and family. And so that dimension can come in. But once you see the different perspectives of them and their being, then it gets easier. You can find a common ground without it necessarily being confrontational. So if we moved it along a little bit to your identity, how do you want the world to see you? What's that higher place, elevated place you're trying to get to for the world to see you in the work that you do and the life you live?
Yeah, I see myself as a financial coaching artist, and people then say for me, how do you get the science? Financial planning is a science. We can say coaching is a human science. How do you get it to artistry? And I think it's if we think about it, is all these things that we talked about, is how do you get that over? How do you get people engaged in an eloquent way of bringing together the whole science of financial planning, the whole science of the human financial behavior, but helping people to become better at that money? And I think that's the point where the financial artistry sits. And if I can spread this wonderful work we are doing across the globe and getting more and more advisors to do this. And I think different advisors will engage on different levels with this. That's the other thing that I believe. I don't think we're going to get everybody to be masters in terms of behavioral science, but if we can just get them to have these conversations with clients, then I think we can make huge leaps and bounds in terms of helping clients out there.
Because at the end of the day, really, money mastery is about mastering yourself.
Yeah.
Because money is an energy force, brings up tremendous amounts of emotions, and I think you've used the word mood around ontological work. It triggers all of that. But if you can understand yourself better and your life perspectives, then you'll understand where money fits and the flow of money in relation to that. And I think that's really the key point why we're dealing with behavior. And if people can get to their life meaning and being, or know their why, which again I think is part of the ontological work, then you can get things to stick.
Yeah. And the other thing is that you're saying there is also a lot about the assessments we make. So if we're going to have abundance mentality, then we'll draw that to us. If we're going to have a scarcity mentality, then it will be that. If we want to keep up with the Joneses and we use that language, then we'll never be able to build wealth and sustain wealth. So the language we use, the declarations that we make, the assertions, how we grew up, all of that is critically important in terms of the way we engage with the world. And it starts with that. If we can help people to take on a new attitude towards the world and towards money, then we'll be able to help them create wealth and sustain wealth.
Yeah, because I think if their fear around money is not having enough, or some other fear related to money, then there's always going to be a problem. And usually they come from fears of yourself. So very important to get those things cleared up. And in a way, we're all born into the world with some of those challenges, whether it's we come from a lot of money, having a lot of money, or not enough money. We're born with a challenge in that area, and it's our job, I think, to go and sort it out. And doing the work we do helps with that. So if I just wrapped up here, Hendrik, have you got a final tip for the listeners today, wherever they might be in the world, South Africa, America, Asia, wherever people might be listening to this?
Yeah, so I think the tip that I perhaps want to leave is a little bit also coming from the ontological work. And we talk about first order learning and second order learning. So we can take a DNA report and we can let a client complete it, and we can have a superficial discussion around it, which will add value. I think that's the first thing. We'll add value by that process, and that will be first order learning. Or we can engage with the client in terms of changing their attitude towards the world. So by engaging them and changing, helping them to deal with fear, helping them to deal with money anxiety, helping them to understand their ways of engaging in terms and their behavior around of budgeting, and helping them to change the language and the mood they are engaging with their money. And if we can do that, I think we'll really be making a huge difference in the world. So it's the financial DNA tool is a wonderful tool to use, a lot of value in terms of it, and try it out, use it, but you can get so much depth in terms of it. You can get so much value for your own practice, for your clients out of it. So just go and do it.
Yeah, thank you, Hendrik, and everybody. You can go and do it at financialdna.com, and there's a take a trial page. But I think it's important that as much as the financial DNA will be the starting point to talk to you about your relationship with money, it's also important to have a financial coach and have guidance and wisdom to go on that journey, and not to be by yourself. And I think you talked about that at the start, Hendrik, as well. Life can be a lonely journey, and I think you need someone to share the load with. And so that's where coaching's important. I think, more advisors that get coached in this, just for their own good. And if they can embrace this, then their clients will, and the world will be off in a better place. So thank you so much, Hendrik, for spending time with me today. It's been fantastic.
Thanks, you. It was very nice spending time also with you, and thanks to all the listeners that will be listening to this recording. Thank you.